Hey, good morning everybody. My name is Sylvester Francis Alonz. I'm a Loyola sophomore majoring in communication studies and religious studies. So I found this project through the Hank Center undergrad fellowship to intersect a love of studying religion and a love of studying how communication works. So to begin here, I'd like to share one of my favorite sources, informal. Before I do that, I do have a portfolio on hand presented online. I know I'm supposed to share the portfolio, I'm not sure how, but I can collect people's emails if you want to copy the portfolio to look at your free time. It gives an overview of what the project was, the source I'll talk about soon. Some work I did in Catholic studies, including a speech and a presentation, video about that coming soon. And then my main source, Liberation Theology, on that tab. And then specific work I did with Dr. Villanueva, who's seated in the back from the School of Communication. Then I'll list my sources. I also have assignments for anybody who's interested. I listed some things to read or some ideas for what to listen to, and then a little introduction to myself, and then more of an introduction to myself. First source, I have it right here. I have a gospel book titled The Gospel of Hip Hop by KRS-One. 2009, famous New York, Brooklyn rapper KRS-One published The Gospel of Hip Hop, a Christian-style Bible philosophical analysis of hip hop. So that's a source that I'll consult throughout the presentation, just to let everybody know. So what is hip hop? What does hip hop do? Well, how does hip hop and theology intersect? Theology, when I think of theology, I think of contemporary issues. So one thing that I will point out is this. Hip hop is explicit. Hip hop is provocative. Hip hop is relevant. Hip hop is present. Earlier in the semester, I think in semesters. Last semester, you had a world leader who said, Nazis are fine people, just as violent as African Americans and people who support them. So a hip-hop artist, Eminem, in a freestyle wrote these words in a case study I want to share. Support for the Klansman. Tiki torches in hand for the soldier that's black and comes home from Iraq and is still told to go back to Africa. Yes, that was very explicit, that was in you, it got you thinking, it disgusted you a little bit. It's not highly scientific. You don't have to know background to know what he's talking about. I didn't have to give the explanation and see what he's referring to. I'm not sure if I need evidence to say that this is even a problem. The theology that I consulted with in correlation with my Catholic studies courses came from an ethics class in my first semester. And the topic I stuck to, the topic I wrote my essay on, is liberation theology. The background, liberation theology from Gustavo Gutierrez from his 1971 book, A Theology of Liberation, of History, Politics, and Salvation. This theology, one of the three premises of this theology that the church took was the preferential option for the poor. And specifically in the course, we did a reading, and I saw the book online, didn't get a chance to get it, but turn back to notes. He lists three functions of this theology. First, political and social liberation, actual freeing, actual content in his book addressing socioeconomic inequality. Next, more theological approach, emancipation of the poor, the downtrodden and oppressed, from all that halts development of self and dignity. In a couple of video lectures by Gustavo Gutierrez, when he goes to the second point, he says, we don't just stop poverty, we stop the systemic causes of poverty to make it continuous. So that's what he means by halt anything that stops development of the self and dignity. And then finally, he takes a nuanced approach saying, see the glory of God in the poor as a way to affirm him. This theology is a particular one. It is Latin American socioeconomic theology, yes. It was criticized by the church. It was criticized by USCCB. They didn't take that position. They accused him of being far-left Marxist in a time when military dictators rule South America. I can't speak on that right now, but I'll say they didn't like it at first. So he's saying instead of a gospel of prosperity, you take the gospel of the margins. I'll put this up here and then I'll consult a couple of passages from this book on what hip-hop actually is, or a more systematic look on it. Peace and much love to all generations, past, present, and future. Hip-hop is our word, and this word is the truth of our being. From this word, all of our words come, for it is our words that the truth of thought and intention. Words are the fragrance of our being. Specifically, I was present at the beginning of the world age, August 11, 3114 BC, and I was again present at the births and transformations of hip-hop since its artistic origins at 1520 Sedgwick Ave, the Bronx. A Chicago faith leader who was interviewed, asked to remain anonymous, when asked how do you define hip-hop, said, I have 4 pillars: a verbal aesthetic, technological appropriation, use of public space, kinetic movement. To get a more creative definition, it says, I am the MC who reaches above poverty skillfully. I am the b-boy who destroys negative circumstances every day spiritually. I am graffiti who thinks and grows. I am the DJ who delivers while cutting, mixing, and scratching. I am the beatboxer. I am the fashion. I am the language. Now that I've defined it, how is it used? Certain organizations within the city, such as Precious Blood Ministries of Reconciliation on the South Side, use restorative justice work. Why do they choose hip-hop? Reasons are storytelling, engaging youth in something the youth actually want to engage in, and then the function they said, affirming experiences. There's an experience in communication studies where a word slips my mind right now, that if you don't see yourself being represented in media, if you don't see yourself in mainstream culture, you think you don't exist. So something that came from people who didn't exist. Hip-hop and theology, in my mind, are living traditions. They talk about things we'd rather not talk about, and they don't forget their roots. From the margins, from the gritty, from the not pretty, for what you would want to talk about. Social advocacy in provocative ways. I said, it is explicit, it gets your attention, it makes you feel uncomfortable. But in a Jesuit institution, Ignatian realized if you want to do social justice, you can't do it if you're not disgusted by social issues. Another case study over here. A couple of thoughts to leave with. Pierre Teilhard de Chardin said, by virtue of creation, and still more of incarnation, nothing is profane for those who know how to see. My look on taking hip-hop and theology was, if you believe in finding God in all things, it doesn't mean I bring God wherever I go. It means God beat me there. My job is to find him there. When you have a culture that already speaks to billions of people around the world, when you have a culture that within 40 years became globalized, you cannot pretend that this is not a theology of its own. Do you curse the prophet or do you curse the prophecy? To wrap up, the reason I enjoy the project, other than reading this, is because it applies to me too. I have a colonial background. I travel the world asking if I belong. Is it wrong to think that music can help me understand that? Is it wrong that the music informs the theology, or is it wrong that the theology informs the music? I'm taking two that seem to be polar opposites, But in Catholic imagination, opposites or dialectics go hand in hand. Sacred and profane. Beauty and disturbing truths.
Thank you, Sylvester, for presenting. I now invite questions from the audience. Please.
Sylvester, thank you. You used the term contemplative in the title. I was wondering how you see, what was the word choice and how you see the contemplative aspect of hip hop?
Using the word contemplative. Okay. Been listening to interviews with certain faith leaders within the city or with private interviews. They use the word contemplative means to think meaningfully, to act meaningfully, to reflect meaningfully. So a lot of these leaders say that they're doing work. Like, for example, a media lab is doing work with disadvantaged youth on the south side. They never said, we open our doors for poor black kids to come inside, feel better about themselves, and go back home. They say, our purpose here is to make these children feel like they belong somewhere. Or it's to understand that these kids come in the doors with a broken family. They're not the top in their classes. Maybe they're doped up coming to our labs. Maybe some of them have experience with law enforcement. Taking all of that, but not showing it to the kids, saying, I'm an ordained clergy member. I have high moral standing. I will help you. It's going to a young person and saying, you like this. You have a talent for it. I have a liking to it. Let's figure it out. Let's think about each step we take. Let's think about organizations we go out to. Let's think, what do we post on our website? So it's the process of doing things meaningfully, to answer the question.
Sylvester, thank you. I think I resonate a lot with what you say. So one of the things I've been thinking about recently, and also in writing about hip hop myself and doing some studies in it, is that a lot of people will reject hip hop from a church perspective because of its profane content, right? Explicit lyrics, misogyny, violence, promoting violence, and they'll use those as things for why people shouldn't listen to hip hop. But this perspective is saying, no, we need to actually listen to hip hop in order to see how God is acting in it, right? So I wonder how is that process? How do you educate someone to recognize the sacred in the midst of something that might apparently be profane, right? Because I think that's where the key is, right? We're not saying that everything in hip hop is a good thing. There might be some things that need to be changed, right? So I don't know, how would you balance that, and what would be your take on that?
Well, that's an experience I definitely had. Sometimes in the academic world, when I tell people I'm doing the work on hip hop, the reaction is a laugh. I sometimes take it as, oh, okay, you're doing something that's maybe not academic, or you're doing something that sounds fun and cool, but I could never see anything deeper than what I already think about hip hop. So my first reaction when I started the project, after talking with Professor Villanueva, was it's just basically an idea of change. I think you and I had a conversation when we said the church thought instruments in the liturgy was a disgusting thing to happen, but now it's a norm. Or classical music was disgusting, now it's a norm. Only 40 years ago, a Monday pop culture icon, Kendrick Lamar, won a Pulitzer. Some people thought that legitimized the genre of music. That as if something that already speaks to people needed to be legitimized even more. So it's a matter of two things: of not being afraid to be offended, not being afraid to offend, and also understanding. And when you do that, you can do the second thing, which is go to different perspectives. It's not they're not there. It's just we need to listen.
Great presentation by Sylvester. With that, I wind up the first presenter. I invite Mason for his presentation, and the presentation